Hey everybody, it's Professor Diffley. This is History 100, Chapter 7, Lecture Video 3. Alright, picking up here, we were talking about the barbarian invasions of the Western Roman Empire. Where we left off was we had the Vandals who had taken over, got through Gaul, eventually settled in what is today Spain and North Africa. So next is the Ostrogoths. These are other Gothic tribes mostly the Eastern Goths after Alaric and the others. So they're eventually going to come in and also assert their power here. So what's going on? State of the Roman Empire at the end of the 5th century, so the end of the 400s, where we're at. Well, we are at the end of the Western Roman emperors. The last Roman emperor official in the West is Romulus Augustulus. And you can see from the name, he's actually just a little kid, but the name that's he's been put in power by the Praetorian Guard and others. The name there tie him to the founding of Rome and the start of the Roman emperors. Eventually, the Ostrogoths are going to come in, conquer Rome, and take over and dethrone him. They don't kill him; he's just a kid. They give him a nice place to live afterwards and all that. But he is the last Roman emperor. Eventually, you get Odoacer. Or Odoacer, who comes in from the Ostrogoths and takes over and makes a deal with Emperor Zeno. So technically, the Eastern Roman Emperor is still Roman Emperor in the West, but in reality, he exerts very little power, and you have Odoacer really rising in his place. And then you're eventually going to get the rise of Theodoric, another Goth who takes over as sort of emperor in all but name in Italy and beyond. And then we'll see more of this when we get into the Byzantines. But the Goths really do bring in the fall of the empire, the Vandals, the Goths, and then the Ostrogoths here. And here's Theodoric, the Ostrogoth here later with a and that's who's depicted here. Another coin of him, Theodoric, the Ostrogoth. But you can see a lot of the same Roman symbols and writing there. And so here's some more of the barbarian tribes. These are the Anglo-Saxons. And Britannia is which is the British Isles. Eventually, the Britannia, the islands, are abandoned by its remaining legions in 410 CE. Some of the Romans stay, and what you get is a mixed population of Romans and Celts and Anglos intermingle with the German invaders, who are the Anglo-Saxons and Jutes. And they all create, essentially, later we'll see this, the Normans will come in, but they create a new culture there. In Britain is essentially what it is. These tribes, they dominated almost all the islands with a few generations. Eventually, the Celts move out, and then it's the Anglos and the Saxons take over, and the Celts retreat to Wales and Scotland. So that helps explain later the divisions in the British Isles. And the rest of Britain becomes Angleland, which is England, right? So you get it. So that's the name there. But so you have these other groups. Why did the Romans abandon Britannia? The empire's fallen apart. They're far from home. They really can't keep control. Again, there is a belief that many of the Romans stayed and helped intermingle with the Germans and the Angles and create this new culture. Now, here's where we see with Roman law and Romans and Germanic barbarians and assimilation, really this melding of completely new cultures. The Visigoths are the first to really show this. Things have melded when King Alhof marries a Roman noblewoman, an aristocrat, one of the old patrician class. That shows that now even the Romans, those who are culturally from Rome, view the Goths, the barbarians, as their equals, right? And even higher than them. And so they begin to meld more and more. Visigoths write down their laws for the first time. And this is they write it not in their own language, but in Latin. And that is a real key point there. Why? Because much of their population, other than their own people, are Italian, or Romans who speak Italian. The Franks will do this as well with King Clovis and the Merovingian kingdom. We're going to talk about them more in coming chapters. Even there, they, again, with the law code, they write it in Roman, but they begin to change in Latin, they begin to change their law code, getting rid of what used to be the blood feuds of the Germanics, right? Again, remember I talked about this. You kill my family member, I kill yours, and then we go back and forth forever. what they create is the Were Guild, and this is very similar. Well, not similar, but it is origins of some of our modern laws, like tort laws, personal injury. So now the idea is if you injure somebody else, instead of getting to take their arm, their eye, right, like an eye for an eye, what we're going to do is we're going to make you whole, not physically, but monetarily. So you kill, you cause me to be injured. I can't work, so now I'm going to be paid to make up for that. That will be my what I'm going to get, and that's the Were Guild. It's going to take a while for them to accept this. This is very militaristic culture, so this idea of accepting money rather than pride and the blood feud, it's going to take a while. But again, this is very much like tort law today, right? You cause someone an accident, you got to pay for their injuries, time lost at work, all that sort of thing. So this is the origins of it in many ways, and that's important from the American perspective and the English perspective. While much of Europe uses laws that come from Rome and then later Napoleon, England and America will use more of this Germanic system there, which isn't surprising. English is really a Germanic language. Or English is actually a mix of the German, Latin, and French, but it is very much a Germanic language, and we could see that here, where that's why our laws are different than those areas. Impacts of this, again, you could read all this. The Western barbarians really become Romanized more than anything, and they come really, they take over in every way. They become just like everybody else. The barbarians aren't threatening anymore. You can't even tell who's who in archaeological evidence anymore because they are all more or less doing the same thing. The East prospers this entire time, and we'll talk more about them, but you can see that. There's some in the notes and the text. Consequences, again, the economy of the West becomes characterized mass production of low-cost, high-quality consumer goods that circulate in massive quantities. This isn't, when I say mass production, I'm not talking about factories, but there is lots of trade and regional and local systems of exchange, long-distance trade. That will eventually go away. We're going to see Europe will be invaded by other groups there. But markets begin to disappear. As you had some of these grand Roman markets. Why? Because there's less people protecting the roads, that sort of thing. The standard of living do decline, and so does the overall population because it's not as unified anymore. And it's going to be a while before it rises to the level that it once was in the Romans. This is a picture of Constantine there. So as I showed you, just a picture of Constantine in the last chapter. What I will say is Justinian, even though it's in chapter 7, I'm actually going to move this into chapter 8. I brought up the next, I combined them. We'll talk about them, including the Byzantines, all in the next chapter. So don't worry about Justinian for chapter 7. I will combine them in chapter 8 and give you the page numbers for that when we get there. All right, that is really it for this. All right, thanks, folks. Good luck. You got any questions, of course, let me know.